Mr. Penguin and the Lost Treasure, Chapter 17. Oh, brother! What? Cried Mr. Penguin. He stumbled backward toward the edge. Edith caught him by the satchel just in time. I don't understand. Miss Bones hasn't got a brother, replied Edith. I knew something wasn't right this morning when I saw the museum was closed. Then you told me about the treasure hunt. I thought, like you said, that was the reason the place was all shut up. But when you left, I went back to the park with Gordon, and I couldn't shake this funny feeling I had. I thought back over everything, and then I remembered you saying that Miss Bones and her brother had asked you to come and find the missing treasure. Well, Miss Bones doesn't have a brother. She doesn't even have a sister. I've known her since she was a baby. I even know her mom and dad, and I used to chat with them when they were pushing her around the duck pond in their park. I realized you could be in a lot of danger, so I followed you. Mr. Penguin couldn't believe his ears. It all sounded completely bonkers. 100 different questions bounced around in his brain, but before he could ask any of them, Colin held up his pad. So it was you we heard clonking and thumping at the door to come in. It was now Edith's turn to look confused. Clonking and thumping at the door, she said. No, that wasn't me. I just picked the lock with this. Easy as anything. She pulled a large hairpin from her belt bag and held it up proudly. But when I got in, you all disappeared down here. Gordon and I had to come down those bloomin' steps in the pitch black, and then of course we were too late again. The four of you had disappeared into the jungle. I had to keep sending Gordon up high to see where you were going, and then I followed his directions, didn't I, Gord? Gordon fluffed out his feathers importantly. I don't move as quickly as I used to, Edith continued, so all these plants were quite tricky to climb over, especially in my slippers. She waggled her feet. She was indeed wearing her slippers, grubby pink ones with fluffy edging and huge red pom-poms on the toes. When I did catch up with you, you'd just gotten onto the alligator's back, and I knew it wasn't a log, but I didn't dare shout to warn you, as I thought Miss Bones and her brother might feed you to the beast. Then you all went over the waterfall, and I thought that was it. I thought that was the end of my lovely Mr. Penguin and Colin. I couldn't believe it when you were saved by the branch. I hurried to try and catch up with you, but you'd gone into that cave, and I couldn't get there before I saw Miss Bones and her brother leaving it. He had 2 great big treasure chests on his shoulders, and Miss Bones was dragging you and Colin out. Mr. Penguin's eyes were like saucers as he tried to keep up with it all. It must have been her, he cried. She must have walloped us on the head with her handbag. Edith nodded. At first I thought you'd fainted, but then I watched Miss Bones pull 2 big ropes out of her handbag and tie you up with them. She threw you both over the ledge with that pair of them laughing like hyenas. They hurried off with all that treasure, and I ran up to stop them, but they pushed me down the hill. I fell against the tree over there, and a coconut hit me on the head. When I came round, Miss Bones and that man were nowhere to be seen. But we'd been helping her, said Mr. Penguin. Why would she do such a thing? I don't know, sighed Edith, but I think there's something fishy about it all. Miss Bones looked different somehow. Not how I remember her at all. Mr. Penguin flapped his flippers and shook his head to clear his thoughts. As the cogs in his brain whirred at supersonic speed, he felt like a puzzle was coming together. He just needed the last piece for it to all make sense. But what was it? The main question was, if Miss Bones didn't have a brother, then who was Montague? That was the key. Brothers. The final piece of the puzzle suddenly slotted into place, and Mr. Penguin clapped his flippers to his head. Do you have your newspaper with you? He asked Edith. Of course, said Edith, ferreting about in her belt bag. But why? Mr. Penguin took it from her and laid it on the floor. He pointed to a photograph on the cover. You see, said Mr. Penguin, I don't think for a minute we've been helping the real Miss Bones at all. In fact, I'd bet your belt bag on it. Look! Edith, Colin, and Gordon studied the photograph of the 2 villainous-looking men. They shrugged at Mr. Penguin. What was he talking about? Mr. Penguin took his pencil out of his satchel and started to draw on top of the photograph. He drew a skinny mustache on Rory, the tall one, and scribbled some hair, glasses, and lipstick on Brian, the small one. Everyone yelped. Colin gasped in capital letters. Gordon didn't say anything, but then he was generally unflappable. Miss Bones and her brother are none other than Brian and Rory O'Houlihan, said Mr. Penguin. They are the jewel thieves in disguise. That is the end of chapter 17.